My name is Paul Molinaro. I work for UNICEF. I see next to my name there's in brackets saying straight talk. So I'm going to just give a perspective into all of this, which is that of a field logistics grunt. And I feel somewhat akin to standing in front of a technological firing squad here. All those fingers twitching on buttons and sending information out, and I think there's actually a lot of power in those fingertips. Maybe I shouldn't be scared, because we're actually quite a symbiotic bunch, communications and logistics and transportation people. Although in the past, you used to follow our infrastructure, whether it was with the camels of Central Asia sending word-of-mouth messages, or whether it was the mail in the clipper ships to India, or across the United States with the railways. Ever since Marconi went beep, beep, beep with his little machine, we've been following you. I got 3 words from today's, from the keynote of this morning, which I swung wildly between being completely inspired by it and absolutely terrified by it at the same time. And the 3 words I took were golf ball, disassociation, and revolution. And on revolution, we can all agree there's a huge revolution in communication, and you're all on the front line of that. But there has been 2 other ones which have, I think, assisted to the creation of the golf ball. One of those is the financial revolution. Using your infrastructure, large amounts of money are able to slosh around the world. And the other one, which has been a quiet one, but has a lot of impact on your life, has been the supply chain revolution. Again, being dependent to a great deal on the infrastructure that communications has created. And to give you an idea of how profound it is, I'd like to ask the people in here to put your hand up if you grow your own food. Not plants, but food. I would wager that most of you are not tailoring your own clothes. It's an assumption. And if you're living in New York, you're probably buying water from a bottle. You're therefore being fed, clothed, and watered by a supply chain system. And if you're looking at food, clothing, and water in the hierarchy of human needs, this is pretty basic. Where I have the fear is that these supply chains are providing these needs, and as more and more people move to large urban centers of population, I think there's a disassociation between people and the places from which the things they're consuming are coming from. There are examples, and supply chains have become incredibly efficient, wonderful machines to watch and to manage. And the information flow is astounding. They've driven cost so far out of it to be able to provide cheap produce for consumers. The business model may need rethinking. I think the days of catching salmon off the coast of Norway and shipping it to Vietnam to be sliced, packed, and then sent back to the EU for sale may well and truly be over. So it's a profound impact this is happening. And there's an insecurity in it, and again, connected to this disassociation. And I give 2 examples. We are dependent on this supply chain for our needs. All cost has been driven out. It's a very lean machine, but it leaves absolutely no room for maneuver in case of emergency. Hurricane Katrina gives you a very good example of an urban population separated from its supply chain, and the panic that will set in as a result of no food being available on a supermarket shelf. There's another example in the UK in the year 2000. Some truck drivers blocked 5 oil refineries to protest the price of diesel fuel for their trucks. 2 days later, there was not a scrap of food on a supermarket shelf. This can be quite scary. If you go back to the supermarket, when you're going to the checkout, you're using a barcode reader. And it wasn't installed there to save the fingers of the checkout clerk, as much as I'd wish it was the case. But every time you swipe that item across the barcode, it's not just telling you the price of the goods and totting up how much you owe. That information is going into a large software program, material resource planning tool, and it's calculating what you're buying, the demand, the consumption, At the end of the day, it sends triggers to a regional distribution center, normally based somewhere outside of town, and orders produce to come from that into the retail supermarket the next day. That regional distribution center consolidates all of that data and then sends information to its suppliers to feed the distribution center, and so on and so forth. Those regional distribution centers, you'll normally find them clustered around airports. When you fly into somewhere like Amsterdam or Paris, and in New York, I think they're clustered around Newark Airport, you see them laying there with the trucks backed into them, looking somewhat like the circuit boards that most IT people will be familiar with. And they're there for a reason, because it's actually software that has determined where they're going to be located. It's a modeling software that determines the price of land, access to transport infrastructure, and the locations of your physical distribution. And it then calculates a place, the ideal place, the most cost-effective place to put your distribution center. Everyone uses the same software, so all the distribution centers are in exactly the same place. What does this mean for development? Apart from the fact that supply chains and going to the environment are efficient, but at the same time are consuming massive resources. And to this audience, I'd like to say that where we come from in the supply chain world, every click you make makes a clack for us. We are responding to your clicks. Every time there's a click that moves money to us, we'll generate an order. It will come from the warehouse. The packages will be packed together, and then items will be shipped out. If you take all of your clicks put together, a large ship will leave Shanghai with 11,000 containers on, each ship taking the carbon output of a medium-sized Danish town. So for every action in the supply chain world, there's a reaction. And I have a fear, there's an issue with the power, and there might not be so much power consumption in many of the devices you're spreading out, but it's what the people will ask for once they have access to the global economy that can be worrying. So where do we stand? Our problem is quite simple. We don't have the barcode reader at the end of the chain. That's the last half mile, and it's the supply chain holy grail. If we know what's going on in the last half mile, we can forecast properly, we can measure demand, we can configure our supply chain to be able to respond to that demand, and the supply chain works and is efficient. In our environment, we don't have those supermarket barcode scanners. Our last miles are in very isolated areas. They're often insecure. It's the part of the supply chain with the greatest risk of theft, fraud, and insecurity. And yet we are blundering around in these areas with absolutely no visibility of our demand whatsoever. We simply haven't been able to reach it in a way that we can amalgamate and use that data. And if you're looking at your information infrastructure as a central nervous system, financial as the circulatory system, blood flow, then we are the sinews and the muscles. And where we're operating right now, we're operating with absolutely no vision. We cannot see. We cannot hear what the people really need, and we cannot speak to tell them what's coming down the line. So that's, for us, our holy grail and our last mile. And looking at the efficiency and the wonder of modern supply chains in terms of being able to align financial flow, information flow, and supply flow, and then we need to take this challenge and aim that wonderful machine into the heart of development. Thank you very much.